You see the signs start to build, the tension in their body, the quiet struggle behind their eyes, the moment before the storm, when they're trying in the only ways they know how to hold it together. We've all been taught to manage what comes next, to redirect, to block, to control. But what if, instead of trying to control their behavior, we taught them how to tell us what they need? What if communication wasn't something we demanded, but something that we honored? Today, we're talking about functional communication training, done a little differently, done with compassion, done with assent, done with respect for the dignity and autonomy of every learner that we serve. So let's change the way we teach. Let's change the way we listen. Functional communication training, or FCT, is an evidence-based intervention that teaches individuals to communicate their needs in a more appropriate, effective way. Instead of trying to stop challenging behavior by force or consequence, FCT focuses on understanding why the behavior happens and giving the learner a better tool to meet that need. At its core, FCT teaches a new behavior that serves the same function as the behavior we want to reduce. And that means if a behavior is happening because the learner wants a break, we teach them how to ask for a break. If a behavior is happening because they want a tangible item, we teach them how to request it. If the learner is engaging in the behavior to access attention, we teach them how to communicate that need in a way that is heard and honored. The form of communication can be anything that works for the learner. It could be spoken words. It could be signs. It might be the picture exchange communication system or PECS. It could be a voice output device, gestures, or any other accessible method. In traditional FCT, the goal is to reduce problem behavior, but when we take an assent-based approach, the goal is even bigger than that. It's about empowering the learner to advocate for themselves in a way that's respected. FCT is more than a strategy to just fix challenging behavior. It's a way to teach autonomy, respect assent and assent withdrawal, and support learners in telling us what they need in their own voice, in their own way. FCT isn't about replacing challenging behavior with a different action, although on the surface and from a behavioral perspective, that's exactly what happens. It's about restoring the learner's voice. When we teach learners to communicate their needs, we shift from managing behavior to empowering autonomy. Sometimes we teach very specific communicative responses. If we know a learner's behavior is maintained by escape, we might teach them to say, I need a break. If it's maintained by access to something that's tangible, we might teach, I want the iPad or I want a snack. But sometimes we take a broader approach. Dr. Greg Hanley's My Way protocol also teaches what's called an omnibus mand. This allows the learner to access all the reinforcers that maintain their behavior with just one generalized request. Instead of teaching multiple specific mands, we teach the learner to say my way or some other generalized mand, or even use a signal that tells us they need maybe a break and access to some preferred items, and maybe they also need some attention all at once. This approach is powerful because it acknowledges that in real life, challenges rarely happen in neat, single function packages. Learners often need multiple supports at once, and teaching an omnibus mand gives them a simple, reliable way to communicate that. So both approaches, teaching specific mands and teaching omnibus mands, have their place. What matters most is that we're teaching communication that works in the real world. We're honoring the learner's right to have their needs met. And we're building skills that support autonomy and assent, not just compliance. When we implement FCT with that mindset, we're not just reducing problem behavior, we're building trust, we're building self-advocacy, and we're building a foundation for a future where the learner's voice is heard and honored. To teach FCT effectively and compassionately, we have to start with understanding the why behind the behavior. We often use functional analyses, FAs, or functional behavior assessments FBAs to determine the maintaining variables for problem behavior. An FA is a systematic method where we manipulate variables to see what triggers and maintains behavior. An FBA is less structured, but it involves gathering data, interviews, and observations to hypothesize the function of the behavior. In many real-world settings, learners don't struggle with just one isolated function. That's where Dr. Greg Hanley's work with practical functional assessment, or PFA, comes in. In a PFA, instead of isolating one function at a time, we look at the synthesized conditions that mirror the complexities of real life. We create a context where multiple reinforcers, escape and access, are available. We look at the whole picture of what the learner might be communicating with their behavior. This allows us to identify all the maintaining variables and not just picking one. Once we understand the full context through an FA, FBA, or PFA, we can design a functional communication response that truly meets the learner's needs. In many cases, we start by teaching the omnibus mand, like my way, to give learners immediate access to all their reinforcers. From there, we may shape more specific mands over time if needed, but we always honor the learner's voice first. Other learners may benefit from teaching the specific mands first, rather than teaching an omnibus mand. It's important to customize the intervention to the specific needs of each learner. An assent-based approach also means that teaching the communication skill proactively before the problem behavior escalates. And we're prompting at the first sign of discomfort or struggle and any signs of precursor behavior. We're reinforcing early communicative attempts, even if they aren't perfect. We're never requiring that the learner earn the right to communicate their needs. That is a generic human right. Teaching FCT in this way means that we're prioritizing the learner's autonomy, the learner's right to say no or not now, and we're building a system that listens to the learner, not just one that expects compliance. True assent-based practice goes beyond simply replacing behavior. It reframes our entire relationship with the learner. It's about meeting them where they are, honoring their communication as valuable from the very beginning, and recognizing their early attempts to communicate and advocate for themselves. This commitment to connection is what allows FCT to become more than just an intervention. It becomes the start of a genuine partnership based on trust and mutual respect. When we start from a foundation of trust and respect, FCT becomes more than a clinical tool. It is a bridge to a better, more connected future for our learners and for our field. So one of the tools I use when implementing FCT is something that I call a hard times board. A hard times board is part social narrative, part visual support, and part self-advocacy plan. It helps learners recognize when they're struggling, understand what their options are, and feel empowered to communicate those needs. But here's the key. The learner's involved in creating it throughout the whole process, at least as much as they're able to. I sit down with the learner and together we identify situations that are hard for them. We identify their triggers. Then we brainstorm together what might help. The learner chooses images, words, or symbols that make sense to them. And I make sure their voice and preferences guide the entire process. Sometimes hard times boards are colorful and full of pictures, and sometimes they're simple text. Sometimes they evolve over time as the learner's needs change. So here are a few examples of hard times boards that I've created with different clients. This hard times board was created with a preschooler who was just beginning to develop functional communication skills. We started by identifying his triggers, which were loud noises like a friend crying or a vacuum cleaner running, and the ways he sometimes reacted, like hitting his teachers when he felt overwhelmed. Together, we created a can't do's section where we talked about how it's okay to feel upset, but it's not okay to throw things or hurt other people. Then we brainstormed some can-dos, empowering him to choose strategies that felt right to him. He decided that when he started feeling upset, he could ask for his headphones to block out the noise, or he could ask to take a walk to a quieter area. We added simple pictures to the board to help him remember his choices. We practiced using the board when he was calm so that it became familiar and easy to access when he really needed it. Very quickly, this tool gave him a way to stay connected, advocate for his needs, and avoid escalation, all while maintaining his dignity and autonomy. Now, this hard times board was created with a 13-year-old learner who found it very upsetting to talk about his triggers or focus on things that he couldn't do. Rather than creating a list of can't do's, which would have been triggering for him, we adapted the format to center entirely around a positive action-focused plan. He chose to write simple, empowering statements, one plan for home and one plan for school or when he was out with me in the community. At home, if he started feeling upset, his plan was to run to his room to calm down before talking about what happened. At school or in the community, his plan was a little bit different. He would say, I'm mad, I need a break, and then discuss what made him upset once he was calm. He also chose the superhero image because that's what he was really into and because Iron Man made him feel strong. By centering the hard times board around what he could do, we honored his voice, minimized his distress, and made it more likely he would use the strategies when he needed them. Okay, this last hard times board was created with a 21-year-old woman who was living at home with her parents. She had a strong support system, including her therapist named Sarah and her service coordinator, Jess, her mom, and me, and my name was Amy. While I guided the process, the plan was fully hers. She identified what triggered her feelings of anger or anxiety and what would help her feel more in control. Her triggers included feeling crowded, being told what to do, and loud environments. Together, we created a board that listed her don't do's, things like yelling or throwing objects, and a set of do-dos, which included positive choices she could make when she was feeling upset, such as asking for a break, listening to music, watching TV at home, or reaching out to one of her trusted people. We laminated 2 copies of her board. One she kept on the refrigerator at home, and one she kept folded in her purse when she went out. We didn't need to rehearse it. Instead, when we noticed precursor behaviors, we simply asked her, would you like to check your board and make a choice? It gave her ownership of the process, respected her autonomy, and allowed her to use the strategies she had helped create in a way that felt empowering rather than controlling. Hard times boards are not about compliance. They're about choice. They're about teaching learners you have options, you have a voice, and we will listen to them. When paired with FCT, hard times boards make the invisible visible. They give learners tools to recognize and respond to their own needs before escalation. Most importantly, they affirm just asking for help, space, or support is not just allowed, it's respected. In an assent-based practice, a hard time board isn't a behavior plan, it's a dignity plan. It's a collaboration, and it's one more way we can help every learner move from surviving to thriving. Even with the best intentions, it's easy to accidentally undermine the power of functional communication training if we aren't thoughtful about the details. Here are some of the most common mistakes and how you can avoid them. The first is waiting too long to prompt communication. If we wait until full escalation, they've missed the opportunity to empower early communication. Instead, prompt at the first sign of discomfort, refusal, or other precursor behavior. The second mistake is only honoring perfect communication attempts. Early efforts might be messy. A gesture, a partial word, a pointed look, even mild challenging behavior Honor those early approximations. Communication doesn't have to be perfect to deserve a response. And the third mistake is overloading the learner with too many demands or expectations. Remember, when teaching FCT, less is more. Keep expectations manageable. Build success early and often. And then the next mistake is fading supports too quickly. Independence is a long-term goal, but rushing to fade prompts or reinforcement can lead to frustration and skill loss. So move slowly based on the learner's readiness, not on adult convenience. And the final mistake I want to talk about today is ignoring assent withdrawal. If a learner is clearly communicating, I don't want to, even if it's not the communication form you taught, honor it when possible. True assent-based practice listens to all communication, not just the expected ones. FCT is often taught as a behavior reduction strategy, but when we step back and see it through the lens of assent, autonomy, and human dignity, it becomes something much deeper. FCT at its best is not just a set of procedures, it's a relationship tool. When we teach a learner that their communication is valuable, even if it's in its earliest imperfect form, we send a powerful message. You matter, your voice matters, your needs will be heard. Every time we prompt a request instead of redirecting a behavior, we build trust. Every time we honor an early approximation, we build confidence. Every time we respect a no or not now, we build safety for that learner. The relationship between a provider and a learner is not built through compliance. It's built through connection, through honoring, through listening. When we use FCT as a relationship tool, we aren't just improving behavior, we're building resilience. We're strengthening self-advocacy. We're nurturing the learner's belief that they have agency in their own life. And that's what changes everything. Because when a learner believes they can ask for what they need and be heard, the world becomes a more accessible, more compassionate place for them. And isn't that what we all want to build for them? If everything we've talked about today resonates with you, if you believe that learners deserve communication, autonomy, and dignity, you're not alone. We're part of a growing movement of BCBAs, therapists, educators, and advocates who know there's a better way. Inside the dojo, we take everything you've learned here and build on it with real-world tools, including CEUs that actually change your practice, assent-based protocols ready for real classrooms and clinics, a community that shares your commitment to compassion, ethics, and sustainability. You deserve support too. You deserve to practice in a way that feels aligned with your values, not in constant conflict with them. The future of ABA doesn't live in paperwork, it lives in people. It lives in communities built on trust, courage, and compassion. And it starts with you. Join us inside the dojo. Let's rebuild the field, one supported BCBA at a time.